All right. My name is Ben Burgis. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined by Victor Brazone and Ethan, who are, among many other things, two of the co-hosts of the Academic Edgelords podcast. And I, as you can see, if you're, if you don't have YouTube on in the background where you're doing dishes or something, I got super crunched for time today, so I did not have a chance to, was not able to drive out to the studio. So that means that, some of this, yesterday I went on Novara Media to talk about the New Hampshire primary results, and I had to spend like half the interview like taking my cat off the computer. So that could be the situation here. We'll see. On the plus side, since that means that the bar cart right behind me, I guess, just off screen. So I can't drink during this one. So that seems like it could only help.
Do they allow you to bring beers to the other studio, or is there a rule?
I think you might be allowed to, but I mean, it's certainly I would have to make a point of of like bringing it, right, like the packet.
Of course,
it's not just right there. But in any case, we do have quite a bit to get through. Yeah.
Random question then. Do these debate breakdowns go up as podcasts on your podcast feed, or are these YouTube only?
So they have been YouTube only. I think I was, I think I actually, that's a good reminder. I think by the end of last year, I was actually putting them out on the podcast feed, but I kind of forgot with the last one. So perhaps we'll restart doing that. But yes, the vibe train suggests Destiny Shapiro on Lex Friedman. I was actually, somebody was asking me about that the other day, and I told them that pretty much the only circumstances under which I could imagine watching that would be if we did a breakdown on it. But we'll see. Maybe eventually
we should. I feel like that's for us. That's one I feel like, I don't know if we have exactly a debate type, but I feel like whatever that type is, I feel like that one fits it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a balance. I mean, we've done. I guess you and I guess you guys haven't been on for any of these, but I mean, we've done a zillion of like firing line things with William F. Buckley on here. You and I did one. You guys and I did one where we watched John Searle, arguing about philosophy of mind and artificial intelligence. So there is a little bit of a highbrow, lowbrow balance, but that definitely Shapiro Destiny fits into one of the categories that we've always done on here.
I mean, I will say it's hard to get lower brow than the one we're about to continue watching now.
Yeah, no, the brows get no lower than this. But on that note, since we do have quite a bit more to get through, maybe let's rewind this to where Glenn starts talking. Let's go back to it.
Lawyers said
besides Eastman, Powell, and Giuliani, and who is on his team here claiming widespread election fraud?
Look, we're live on air.
I know we're live on air.
All these people are convicted and pleaded guilty, except Giuliani.
Folks, let's ask. I want to ask Glenn. What do you think, man? Glenn, do you think that this thing was stolen?
I think the election was rigged. I'm not somebody who thinks that there's evidence conclusive that the election was stolen. I do think we should be a lot more attentive to when election processes get changed out of the blue, like, because there's COVID, we're going to have a ton of new conventions for how we do mail-in ballots. I think there's a lot of potential for fraud there. I don't think there's evidence that I've seen, at least, that's conclusive that the 2020 election was stolen. I do think, though, it was rigged in all sorts of ways, from internet censorship to all kinds of interference on the part of the U.S. security state, lying and saying that a very incriminating story about Joe Biden was the byproduct of Russian disinformation when it absolutely was not. Facebook and Twitter censoring that story right before the election. These are all examples of corrupting, rigging by institutions of authority. On the question of whether no, I don't. I'm not somebody who thinks there's evidence that it was stolen.
Well, how would you define the difference between rigging it and stealing it?
Rigging it is when institutions of authority cheat or act corruptly in order to manipulate public opinion to prevent stories from getting to them, like those news stories about Joe Biden and the way that he exploited his family connections in Ukraine and China to profit for his family, and lying about it and saying that it's Russian disinformation, censoring the internet to prevent stories from getting to the public, having the security state, the CIA and the FBI that's supposed to have no role in our politics, being the ones to cook up those fabrications. That's all examples of rigging and manipulating our democracy the way that we accuse Russia of doing. The US security state, the corporate media, Twitter and Facebook did that way, way worse. Stealing the election is dumping ballots that were legitimately cast, or fabricating ballots in favor of one candidate or the other that actually weren't cast, manipulating the machines in order to have the loser be the winner. That's what I would distinguish between rigging and stealing.
So
to clarify,
do you think that Donald Trump asking Jeffrey Clark to go and threaten the DOJ that if they don't sign on to a false letter trying to bully states into claiming there was mass election fraud by claiming the DOJ had actually found someone that had it, that was testified to under oath.
Oh God, under oath.
Do you think that would be considered an act of corruption?
The whole point is, if Trump legitimately believed that the election was stolen, as Democrats believed in 2000, 2004, 2016, right.
No, that's not right. It's not answering the question.
Then I'm answering the question. No, I just can't do it in 7 seconds. If Trump believed genuinely that the election was stolen, then all of those steps that he undertook to try and present the Congress the way to alleviate the stolen election, to have courts reverse the stolen election, to have Mike Pence exercise what he thought was his constitutional authority, might have been wrongful, but they weren't illegal, and they most definitely weren't a coup.
So if he thought that the election was stolen, he was allowed to tell the DOJ that they needed to sign on to a false letter claiming they'd found election fraud. Otherwise, he would replace Rosen with Clark. That was something he was allowed to do.
False letter. All this stuff's crap.
The DOJ hadn't found anything, so the DOJ attesting that they had found something would indeed be false. That's right. I know. In this world, we need evidence, Alex. I'm sorry.
Oh, evidence. Oh,
I know. Yeah, evidence from evidence. Yeah.
So
Did 2 Men Have a Baby?
Isn't there a sitcom called 2 Men and a Baby?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
3 Men, and it was a great movie.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, my bad.
No, but I mean, we're sitting here like, guys, they said it was worse than Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Like Glenn says,
so
wow, you're fighting your demons up here. None of us are saying that.
Alex, you pointed out, that the votes, they went up way at night. They went up way high. Trump was winning, and then all of a sudden, Biden pulled ahead at like 1 a.m.
Red Mirage.
Yeah. So, but do you understand that the media basically told the American public that this is what happens basically every election?
Yeah, they pre-programmed it, Red Mirage.
No, do you understand?
No, it doesn't happen every election.
Do you understand why that happened?
No, I'm not smart enough to understand. The trucks, when they shut down the polling places, and the trucks pulled in, and they blocked the windows out and ran the same ballots over and over again.
Let me explain it to you. Donald Trump, for months before the election, he kept saying mail-in ballots are rigged. Don't vote by mail. So do you think that Republicans are going to vote by mail if Trump says not to? So Republicans...
But that's chicken and the egg. Oh, let me finish.
Let me finish, and then you can. Republicans didn't vote by mail because Trump said, it's not safe. Democrats voted by mail. Mail-in votes were counted at the tail end of the vote count, as they always are. So what happens? So Trump pulls ahead early in the night, just like everybody said was going to happen if you were paying attention. They start counting the mail-in votes. Biden's moving up. They start counting more mail-in votes in these states that are in the big cities, which are primarily Democrats. What happens? Biden pulls way ahead in the big cities, just like everybody that was paying attention
would
have known.
Can I talk? That's why they had to all over block the windows out, kick everybody out, claim water mains broke. Let me talk. And then magically on the surveillance cameras, just keep loading the machines over and over again. But you're right.
You actually
let's stop. You're right. No, I agree with you. Trump actually lost. So why are you so scared to let him run again?
I'm not scared to let him run.
So you support him being on the ballot?
I support whatever the Supreme Court says because I think they should define what insurrection is. I think that's fair. I'm not saying I'm on either side. But let's go back to the pulling out votes or tabulating votes multiple times. Did you actually watch more than the 14-second clip that Giuliani put out there where they purportedly pulled out ballots from under the table?
Let me ask you a question.
No.
Why in Michigan and Georgia did they block the windows?
No.
No. I mean,
Why? I don't know why. Ask them.
Why did they say a water main broke? They later admitted it didn't.
These all went to court. All these were in court. And
let me stop you. Because you guys, hold on, stop.
No, all of them went court.
Can I say one thing? I'll give you the floor. I'll give you the floor. Let me say one thing.
Go ahead.
I was found guilty by 2 judges in Texas and Connecticut, and then they had a jury trial on how much damages. Trump, they changed the law, has a judge who said at the beginning of the real estate hearing he's guilty. And then Letitia James said in the video, we've already found him guilty. She was so dumb, she said it. We already found him guilty. He's guilty. And then Trump doesn't get a jury trial in New York. So you're pointing to the judiciary and the corrupt lawyers that have run this country down the ground.
Who are you pointing to?
Man.
Wasn't that because his lawyer didn't check the jury trial?
Here's the thing. January, let me say this right now. January 6th, what an insurrection.
Also, the videos that you're referring to, the running the votes multiple times.
The Democrats the violence.
And we're not going to give the Democrats the violence they won we talked about in 2024.
But let me tell you, you guys keep looking for one. Once you guys start the fight and launch martial law, you're going to actually get the real thing, and then you'll know what it is.
Alex, how long have you been calling for martial law? How many decades now?
Also, all the examples you're bringing up have literally
COVID lockdowns were martial law.
Oh my God. And they didn't last forever like you guys
we shut their ass down.
No, you didn't shut down anything.
Fucking ass.
No, the Supreme Court ruled against
Biden won the election and it stopped. Biden won the election and it stopped, so you shut them down.
Exactly.
Are you part of Biden now?
Let me ask you a question.
No, why are we getting pulled off the Georgia? Why are we getting pulled off the Georgia stuff?
Is Rachel Maddow right?
Why are we talking about COVID right now?
No, he brought it up. If Biden is Biden right that you take the shot, you're protected. Is that true?
I think what Biden did. I think what Biden did was here's what Biden did for the shot. Okay, what happened was Raffensperger and everybody in Georgia looked over all the tapes that you're claiming about, but the ballots being ran 3 times. Not only was that information false, Trump was told that it was false. Trump knew that it was false. Trump repeated it over and over again, including in a call to Raffensperger. And finally, Giuliani has come out saying that it was false, but it was his First Amendment right to lie about it. When Ruby Freeman took him to court for defamation because he lied about something you could clearly see on video evidence.
Okay, well, this is a question, Darren. Firstly, do you think? If you want to talk about it, if you think the election was rigged or stolen, but also is it protected speech to question an election and claim that it was stolen?
Of course it is.
That's a great question. I subscribe to the sort of rigged versus stolen distinction, and I'm more in the rigged category. And I think that's the more meaningful type of interference is the censorship, is all of the other tools that have been deployed in order to rig the election. I think that's more significant and than the sort of more hyperbolic claims regarding hacking the machines and or so forth. The
claims that Trump was
making these kinds of things.
So then you agree that Trump was wrong when he said it was a stolen election?
Well, it depends what specific claim he's using.
It's a definitional thing.
Let's say when Trump kept pushing that Dominion was switching votes and it cost him Georgia.
That I don't believe in the Dominion stuff.
Yeah, I don't either. It was
a lie.
Trump was lying about it.
Trump was lying about it. Wrong.
He was lying.
But see, we're intellectually honest here. The point is that the State Department runs around the world looking at everybody else's elections. And the number one thing you get sanctions for is taking a candidate off the ballot. And that's what Democrats are doing right now. And America sees that.
The Democrats are not doing it. That's going to go to the courts.
Republicans actually filed
It's not the Democrats Supreme Court of Colorado. It's not the Democrats Secretary of State
Supreme Court
in Maine. You just said the Democrats aren't doing it.
Alex,
they are
in Colorado. Alex, in Colorado.
God damn, that's a lie.
In Colorado, who filed the suit? 6 people. How many of them were Democrats?
What is this? Democrats?
How many were Democrats out of the 6?
Doesn't matter.
No, how many?
I know Liz Cheney's a Republican.
How many were Republicans who filed the suit?
Cheney's a Republican.
5 of the 6 people that filed the suit in Colorado to get Trump off the ballot were Republican. So stop saying Democrat.
Oh, yeah, it's not. Democrats don't want Trump off the ballot.
Glenn's actually responding.
Horseshit.
That's not what happened. What happened is the only people who have standing in Colorado to bring a suit are people who can vote in the Republican primaries, which means either Republican voters or independent voters. Although the suit was brought in their name, the lawsuit was spearheaded and was paid for and was organized by a Democratic Party aligned group called Crew that boasted of this and took credit for it. So yes, the suit was brought in.
Glenn, we had some audio feedback, Glenn, if you can hear us. We're going to request we had some buzzing, Glenn. I want to make sure that everything you said is clearly heard. So we're going to fix that and then get back to you.
Let's go back. Glenn, go ahead and talk again. Let's see.
Try it out.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how much of that you heard, but what I was saying was that in Colorado, in order to have standing to
Hey, Glenn, stay there. We're going to have to reconnect with you. I want to hear this. But
so I can say what he's saying. He's saying that it was brought by a Democratic institution, but they needed Republicans.
Not just a Democrat institution. It's a notorious lawfare outfit.
Right. But how many Democratic states said, okay, he can stay on the ballot? So like, don't just say like every Democrat just wants you throw Trump off the ballot.
You're right. The Democrats don't want him off the ballot.
I actually, if you were to ask me, I would say let the voters decide. Like I honestly,
I think other candidates would have a better shot than Trump to beat Biden. I honestly do.
Well, who?
I think Nikki Haley. If she there's no way she would get the nomination.
World War III bird brain.
I think she would defeat Biden. I really do.
We actually have a tweet from Vivek Ramaswamy claiming that the what do you call it? He called it Happy Entrapment Day, talking about January 6th. You guys think that it was an entrapment?
100%.
Yep, 100%. Donald Trump entrapped all those poor people to be there.
That's true.
They probably thought he'd bail them out.
That's why
or that he'd pardon them like he did every other person in his campaign that was convicted of any crime.
We want a 10-day investigation. That's why I said be peaceful. Yeah, because Trump was always calling for supporters.
He also called for them to fight like hell, and Giuliani said that
fight like hell means for our freedom and our vote and our country.
Okay, and people can say things that they don't mean in order.
Hey, when you go to a high school football game at a pep rally, and they go, and then the cheerleaders go, fight, 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 fight.
Trial by combat. That doesn't mean anything either.
That's a legal term.
I think the thing that's most instructive, the things that's most instructive to see what Donald Trump wanted to happen that day is that when he sat down and he watched the violence unfolding on TV, when he saw the people fighting with cops, when he got notification that Ashley Babbitt had been shot, Donald Trump did not take steps to stop the violence that day. Instead, him and Giuliani made phone calls to senators and congressmen trying to get them to stall the vote.
What do you guys think ethically about people in politics telling people to go fight? Do you find it to be misleading?
Look, we're not a neutered population. I mean, I have Democrats that during the impeachment for this, they shut it down when finally Trump put a 5-minute video on of Democrats saying, attack them at grocery stores, attack them at gas stations, attack. We need civil insurrection.
What do we think about the term battleground state?
Yeah.
You know, it's...
The problem is not
typical political rhetoric.
It's the context.
It's not.
Go ahead.
Nobody is upset because Donald Trump said fight like hell. People are upset because for months or years, really even in 2016, Donald Trump has consistently attacked and undermined the electoral process with absolutely no good reason.
No, it's the Democrats said he was a Russian agent. And the Democrats falsely said he was a Russian agent and sick the deep state on him for the 4 years of his administration.
That every single appointee that he made, all of his own people were part of
any evidence Trump's a Russian agent?
No, but that's why he wasn't convicted or charged of any crime for it.
They were the ones saying that the American voters were manipulated by the Russians.
Was he charged?
They were the ones saying,
Alex, was he charged with a crime for that?
Hillary is
was he charged with a crime for that?
They tried.
They tried. Wait, but the Hillary why didn't they just charge him falsely?
They haven't charged him for insurrection.
Wait. Why is Jack currently saying but not
Trump is going to steal the election?
Why didn't he get an indictment?
Is Hillary saying Trump's going to steal the election? Why is Hillary saying Trump's going to steal the election? Why is Hillary saying Trump's
why wasn't Trump indicted?
Why is Hillary saying
Trump's guys.
Why is Hillary saying
Trump's
going to steal?
I'm about to stand up, just so you know, and that would be good TV. But I'm not going to do it.
Well, he won't stop. Well, Alex, and I will dominate.
What we need to do.
And you don't answer a question,
guys. What we need to do.
No, I do answer.
Listen to me for a moment.
We are.
That we don't speak over each other. What we do is we listen to each other, take turns. It becomes way better.
Well, I have a question.
I agree. Well, can I finish my statement here right to the end?
Is it okay that Hillary is on TV this week 3 times I saw saying Trump's going to steal the election?
Hillary is.
Why is she allowed to?
Rent free in your head right now. The problem with Trump's speech. The problem with Trump's speech.
Why can Democrats say it, but Republicans can't? You keep trying to change the subject.
I'm not changing the subject.
Hillary shouldn't be saying that. I agree. Hillary shouldn't be saying that. Who is she? She's a private citizen.
But I think you're allowed to say people are going to steal election, whether you're right or wrong.
That's why Trump isn't being charged for it. Trump, you said it yourself. He's not being charged with incitement. He's not being charged with insurrection.
On the ballot, though.
But that has nothing to do with him saying a particular thing.
Did Joe Biden try to get the votes certified for Hillary Clinton? Did Hillary Clinton try to force Joe Biden in 2016 to certify the electoral votes?
No, because the landslide was so big.
The Biden had a pretty big landslide.
Wasn't Biden's landslide? Wait, hold on. What do you mean the landslide was so big? Didn't Hillary win the popular vote?
Hillary won the popular vote.
And Biden won by more.
No, the landslide.
The narrative collapsed right before our eyes.
So Trump didn't win the 2016 election.
What?
Trump didn't win.
No, which one?
Both 2016.
He didn't win the popular vote.
Well, the Russian help, right?
He didn't win the popular vote.
I from the evidence I've seen, he had a huge landslide. They tried to steal it with illegal alien voters, but it's still Trump was so big.
We're not all privy to the election that exists in your head.
I know. There's no illegal aliens.
Don't give us the same type of information.
Voting.
The rest of us on Earth don't get information beamed down from the mothership. We got to go by what people in reality say. I'm so sorry.
Here we go.
People know you're wrong. The states with the illegals are getting more. California just got 6 more congressional seats.
We need you to come up and rise up. There it is.
I'm tied down.
There's no invasion. There's no border.
You guys think that there was federal involvement here, or there was? That what the extent of it was on January 6th?
All right, trying to exercise some discipline and go a long time.
That was a nice chunk.
Before pausing, because we do have quite a bit left to get through tonight, and I'm really hoping we're going to get through all of it. But man, there was a lot that happened in that chunk. Thoughts?
I mean, I think my favorite part was the moderator being like, I'm going to stand up, but then he's like, I'm not going to do it though. And then he does stand up, but it's just like not really clear like what it accomplished. like now you're standing and trying to moderate as opposed to while sitting. It was all very confusing.
He's gonna stand up. That's like
yeah.
Like what's the implication? Is he gonna like go over and beat them? I mean, like why is he standing up?
Yeah, he's in combat position.
He's got fascinating style too. I feel like that he's like wearing this weird silky shirt and kind of looks like that guy from Workaholics or whatever.
yeah.
It's an interesting flex. Anyway, I think just to back up to what Glenn said there, like at the beginning of when we started watching, I feel like what I find a little bit puzzling about what he said is like his statements seem to be this. Well, he did everything that anyone who sincerely believed they lost the election would have done. Like so it seemed like his kind of dismissal of the severity of what happened in like the time surrounding January 6th was, well, anyone who had a sincere belief that the election was stolen, well, Trump just took all the reasonable steps that a person like that would do. And I just don't understand how he could think that.
Yeah. I mean, like that seems wrong. Like, even if you do believe that Trump sincerely thought that, and I believe that, quite a bit of the testimony, or at least I don't know how much, but I think that there has been some direct testimony from people who talked to him about the election that undermines that, right? But that says no, he knew, he was spouting nonsense about this, and I think there's some reason to suspect that in general. But even if you do accept that he believed this, like, no, there's clearly aren't the reasonable steps you would take, right? Like, the call, like the phone call in Georgia, find me 10,000 votes. I mean, that's not a reasonable step. If you'd found out that like Al Gore had done that, during the Florida recounts, be like, wow, that's really, really bad, right? Like that's criminally bad, right? If he's trying to get people to, get the result that he wants.
Yeah. And Glenn even mentioned 2000 and like kind of positioned it as if it was some sort of equivalence. And that just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that's equivalent is that there were claims about the election being stolen. And, I think if we're just evaluating those claims, like it does matter whether or not they're true or, based on any sort of evidence. But in
terms of the steps taken though, right? It's so
different. Exactly. Right. The disanalogy isn't just that one was true and the other was false, which, although yes, right. Like the other disanalogy is that the steps that were taken were completely different. In fact, not only, I mean, I think this was pointed out, I don't remember whether it was the main show or the post game, but this was pointed out in what we watched last week. Either Destiny or one of the Krassensteins pointed this out, that in, in 2000, right, Al Gore was the vice president. He was occupying the Pence seat. And not only did he not do what Trump was trying to get Pence to do, right? He like gave a little statement about how he disagreed with the Supreme Court decision, but it was important to, it was important that we follow the rule of law or whatever. And and he oversaw the counting of the electoral vote, that he thought was illegitimate, right? To declare Bush, the winner of the election, right? So I mean, like you really can't get more different from that, right? From Trump tried to get Pence to refuse to to do the count, to Gore in the Pence spot not doing it, right? Like that's like there's a lot else that Glenn says that I think is I think is like fair, or at least like or at least fair to some extent, even if I think he's taking it too far, right? But like I think about January 6th itself, about some of the internet censorship stuff, like I do think he has some good points here. He's, I mean, whatever you think about his evolution in the last couple of years, the man's not Alex Jones, but it's not like that comparison just falls completely flat to me.
Totally. Yeah. Go ahead, Ethan.
It's also kind of like, it's questionable. Like, I guess I don't really see, I mean, this point about like, oh, he's just doing like what a reasonable person would do if they thought the election was stolen. And I like, presumably that's supposed to make what he did seem like less concerning or something. But even like that's, even granting all of it, I mean, it's kind of questionable. Like, he could be doing what he would do if he thought it was stolen, even though he doesn't actually think it was stolen. And surely that would still be concerning. And he could also be doing like, he could also just like, he could also be doing like, sorry, I think I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is like, if he did genuinely think that, right? Mm-hmm. Like he could be doing things that are well outside of what it's okay to do, even if you do genuinely think that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally. Like, but it would, even if he was doing like only the things that it would be reasonable to do if he thought that, like if he was doing it, even though he doesn't think that, that would be concerning. And even if he does think that the election was stolen, but it's like delusional that he believes the election was stolen. So it's like, he's trying to go through all the legal avenues to try and change it. I guess it's still like somewhat concerning. I mean, less concerning than if he's like, if he was doing things that like were illegal or outside of the reasonable avenues, if he did think it was stolen. But I mean, it would still concern me that there's this president with like this, like, petty, like delusional belief that the election was stolen from him, even though it's clearly not. And so he's still trying to go through avenues to change that or whatever.
Yeah, even if you were just going through the legal avenues and not doing things like demanded that, the Georgia vote counters find him an extra 10,000
exactly,
votes,
yeah.
Try to concoct slates of fake electors, etc.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's
yeah,
fair.
It would still be kind of bad.
Yeah, no, that would still be bad. But
that would still be kind of bad.
Like if Donald Trump has the ability that, I guess this is like Darren Beatty's claim from last time. Oh, trust me, he fixed this, right? Like, well, what are we supposed to base that on? Is it just like, is the claim just, oh, don't worry, he's so detached from reality that he'll just be able to will himself to believe this based on nothing? Like, it's like, okay, I mean, I guess maybe morally that makes it a little bit better, but that's still pretty bad.
Right.
Still actually quite scary in a way. The other observation I kind of wanted to make was just about, I mean, just watching Alex Jones, I just find it fascinating. Like the way, like his emotional states, the way that he rhetorically positions himself in this just like combative, childish way. Like it reminded me of this book I read a while ago, and I actually might have told you about it a while back then, Ben. It's called like Scout Mindset, and it's like one of those books about like implicit bias, and there's like a million of those, but I really like Julia Galef wrote it, I think, and I really liked the way that she framed it. And I was just thinking about it when I was watching Alex, because like her basic point is like, we need people who have like a scout mindset as opposed to a soldier mindset, right? Soldier mindset, when they're arguing, they're like trying to win, right? They're trying to destroy. But then a scout is kind of like looking at the landscape, right? Just kind of like trying to take in the landscape and isn't necessarily like trying to. So anyway, I thought it was like a somewhat useful analogy, and it was just funny the way that everything that Alex says, it's like, we'll crush you, we're gonna get him, destroy. Like it's like, I can't wait, like they're gonna get you, like, and it's like, oh, he's like, you can't take it because I'm crushing him, and it's just like it's just like so intense. I mean, those metaphors come up and are kind of unavoidable in argumentation to some extent, like winning the argument, defeating, like, but still, just like he is just such an extreme case.
Yeah, it's so
I find it really funny.
And even beyond the metaphors, I mean, there have been, only a couple of them are in what we just watched, but adding it to all the stuff we watched last week, I think there've been like a dozen times that Alex has like threatened the libs, at the table or in the world in general with like literal bloody civil war that like, like he keeps being like, well, that wasn't an insurrection, but you just keep pushing it, you'll get a real one.
Yeah. I also, did anybody else find it like really bizarre when that Darren guy was like, yeah, I think that, these like institutions kind of did things to like influence people to vote in a certain way. But I don't think the election was actually stolen. But like, that's even worse. It's like, surely not, right? Like, surely actual stealing of an election is worse than like Twitter censorship of the Hunter Biden story.
Yeah. Like, look, and I actually think the Twitter censorship was really bad, but like,
yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But like, yes, actually stealing an election would be much worse. And yeah, that is something I meant to bring up, that Darren and Glenn, just call balls and strikes about this, both did this move that like a lot of right-wing pundits will do when they're trying to triangulate between like either they don't want to go beyond a certain threshold of respectability about, they don't want to sound crazy, or, they're just honestly expressing their opinions. I don't know. But they don't want to go along with the actual stolen election claims that Trump and his supporters made, but they also don't want to sound like they're siding with the libs about it. And so they triangulated these ways, that you just heard, right? From both Darren and Glenn, that, we talked about a little bit at the end of the post game last week, that it's like, well, it wasn't stolen in that way, right? And it's like, well, come on, but that's what everybody's talking about, right? So it's like, it's a little misleading to sort of present it as if you're kind of agreeing with the people who say it was stolen, but you're just disagreeing about details. Clearly on the heart of the dispute, you're actually on the side of the libs here, and like, you should admit that. So that's like one thing. Also, I think this might be the last thing for me. I just found it hilarious that Alex Jones went from like ranting and raving about the like windows that were blocked out and some water pipe that they said was broken. It wasn't broken. I mean, I'm just not enough of a Stop the Steal super fan to like know some of this lore that he's referencing. But he goes within like 10 minutes from ranting and raving about all of that to Glenn and Darren like say, oh, well, there's this distinction between stealing and rigging, and I really only think it's rigging, and actually I don't believe the Dominion stuff, to Alex being like, oh yeah, I don't either. It's like, what the fuck? We just heard you.
Yeah.
Like, a few minutes ago, like screaming about the blacked out windows and some video where the ballots were being loaded and reloaded. That like, and by the way, it sounded like Destiny knew exactly the video he was talking about and like wanted to get into the details of it, but it just like got lost in the noise.
Yeah.
Did anyone catch too? Like he kind of slipped it in, like in response to that, he's like, no, I don't believe that either. He's like, see, I can be intellectually honest or something. Slipped it in. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Damn, Alex Jones displaying some epistemic modesty.
Yeah, exactly. But the last thing I was going to mention too is like on this question of like rigging, it's like they both were just saying, oh, it was rigged in these ways, like social media influenced it. And I just find, I mean, I guess it's not a debate about that, but it's like, what are they specifically talking about? Like, you're right about the Twitter censorship. I may also just not be familiar with some of the things, but I don't know. Just it's interesting that on this side now they're kind of like complaining about that when like wasn't that I guess basically the claim from the Hillary Clinton campaign too, like in 2016 that it was rigged because of social media. But then I guess the other thing that they're talking about, I guess, is like, I don't know, like the mail-in voting thing. I guess that's what they mean by rigging. So like more people were able to vote. And then also, this is also kind of an own goal. Like I might be wrong about this, but that like wasn't Trump also fear-mongering about mail-in ballots? So therefore, like right-leaning people just didn't use it. So therefore,
yeah. This is the point that I think it was one of the Krassensteins was kept trying to make it a couple times that people have been talking about this for months. I mean, in fact, I think if you watch one of the all-time strangest podcast episodes that have ever been recorded, which was the Joe Rogan election night 2020 one with Kyle Kalinske and Alex Jones. Kyle points it out there that, yeah, right. For months, Trump had been saying, "Oh, don't trust the mail-in voting. They're gonna they're gonna interfere with that, or they're gonna use that to steal votes. You shouldn't vote by mail." So of course, I mean, it's not like no Trump supporters did, but of course, the proportion of Trump voters who voted by mail as opposed to in person was way lower, right? Trump voters, and which would be true anyway, because this was all pre-vaccination, and Biden voters were more likely to, be on the erring on the safe side end about COVID, and Trump voters were more likely to be in the fuck it, it's just the cold end about COVID. So that alone would have meant that more Biden people than Trump people voted by mail. And then you add the fact that Trump had spent months talking about how, you shouldn't trust the mail-in ballots. And so of course, a lot more Trump people voted in person, lots of Biden people voted in person, lots of Trump people voted by mail, but the proportions, right? The in-person tilted much more towards Trump than the mail-in, which meant that you had this red mirage that, when they were, just counting the in-person, because it takes longer to do the mail-ins, right? They do that at the end. It looked like Trump was doing better than he was, which everybody in the mainstream media had been saying for months was going to happen for all these reasons, which Alex Jones just takes as evidence of how meticulously, the conspiracy was planned. But I think the Glenn Greenwald, Darren Beatty point, I don't think they were saying that the mail-in ballots were rigged. I think all they were saying about rigging, I think the rigging claim is just social media censorship, maybe media, maybe misleading media narratives that said that real things that happened were Russian disinformation, stuff like that, right? I think that's the kind of thing that they were talking about. I think all Glenn said about the mail-ins was and I didn't like this. This was a little squirrely, but he was well, maybe it's legitimate to have questions about that when you introduce a bunch of new rules. Just say what you think, right? But I think his claim about the rigging was just about all that other stuff, which you're right, is very similar to the Hillary stuff about 2016. And much of what Russiagate was about, that, that for the most part, I mean, you did get some of the more demented libs say that Russia was actually hacking the voting machines. That was a conspiracy theory that existed on that side. But by and large, right, they weren't saying that, right? They were just saying well, there were illegitimate things going on to influence the election.
Yeah, the things that I heard was there's Russian bot farms or something, right? That were just on social media, making all kinds of wild claims about Hillary or whatever.
Yeah, right. Which is, I mean, I think some of that's true, but it's also extremely silly to sort of make that your big cope for the election loss. I think the amount of money that was going into that was completely trivial. And also the Facebook ads that I saw that were attributed to the Russian stuff were really incompetently done. And I'd seriously doubt that Russia even made it to the top 10 countries that put the most resources into trying to influence the US election. So yeah, but you're right. That was very structurally similar. And if you think it would be silly, right, to say, to say, oh, it was sort of stolen, whatever. It's I think you should have consistent standards. And I also think that it's some of the things that Glenn is criticizing when he's put it under the rubric of rigging should be criticized. But I also think that it's a little much to conflate, even beyond what I said earlier. I also think it's yeah, look, there are all sorts of things that could be criticized, legitimately that have some influence on how people vote. How much is really hard to measure, right? But like, I don't know. I mean, the fact that like that talk radio stations are, you know, overwhelmingly, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe this is dated, right? But it's like, certainly there was a time not that long ago, I'm sure about that, right? When like talk radio stations were overwhelmingly owned by one company that had the same political agenda, and, you know, and they like filled it with, with like all of those stations were playing the same hosts at the same time, you know, who are like propagating the same political message. So like, you know, in 2004, for example, right, you know, you got like every day from 12 to 3 at like, you know, 10,000 talk radio stations or whatever, right? You know, that because of this corporate near monopoly, you know, you get Rush Limbaugh doing pro-Bush programming, and then like another 3 hours of Sean Hannity doing pro-Bush programming, right? Is that rigging, right? Like, I mean, it's a thing that can be legitimately criticized that might have some effect on the outcome of the election, but like conceptually blurring the line between that and claims that the election was stolen seems like a, you know, unhelpful place to go at best.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, just especially just because, like, you know, as you kind of hinted at this, but it's like, yeah, it's like if the distinction between stealing and rigging is just like stealing is when you actually change how the votes are like counted or processed or something, and then rigging is just like institutions doing something to push people to vote in a certain way. It kind of seems like, you know, especially if you've like, you know, if you've like read Chomsky and you like buy like the manufacturing consent stuff, like basically every election is rigged, you know, like institutions always exert some influence over these kinds of things and have their own ideological purposes and whatnot.
Totally.
So it's just like such a weak claim. And they like, you know, this election was rigged is just such a weak claim. And to conflate that with like, it's almost as bad as stealing, maybe even worse. Who knows? Like the Darren guy said it is worse, which is just like insane. But
yeah, I mean, is it rigging if like third party candidates, you know, aren't allowed into presidential debates, or, you know, that there's like or there's like basically no media coverage of them or whatever? It's like, again, I think all of these things could be legitimately criticized, and like I don't deny that any of them could have some influence on the election, but I think I don't you know, I don't go along with calling any of them rigging, right? So it's like yeah, I think that's really weak. We're about to get into entrapment, I guess, and the sort of role of the feds and all of this, which is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because it's like I think that there probably is like some legitimate, like, I would not be surprised if you know, Glenn or maybe Darren Beatty could like come up with like actually pretty legitimate like instances of like agent provocateur stuff, right? I mean, it's like, God knows there's, you know, that's like a thing that happens a lot, but like but I suspect there's going to be a very similar issue here with like, okay, does that happen and is it bad? But like also, is the narrative that like people on the Alex Jones end are going to try to propagate that just meant that like 100% of the bad shit that happened on January 6th was because of that, right? Like, yeah. You know, and are we going to make careful distinctions between this, and is Moon Lord going to have to stand up? I guess is the question to find the answers to.
Yeah. Is he going to sit back down?
I think there are probably federal agents undercover. Do I think that federal agents committed crimes and led people into the Capitol building? Absolutely not. And there hasn't been any case brought by any of these 700 convicts. None of them brought that up in court. Because
they're being prosecuted in the District of Columbia.
Because there's no evidence of it.
I know the
absolutely
lawyers.
No evidence of it.
They won't let them put defenses on. Let me tell you something. Alex, they said Ray Epps was a hero and did nothing wrong. Now they finally indicted him because they know it's a weak spot in their operation. They're only asking for 6 months. Let me tell you, we're not playing clips for tit for tat here, but I want everybody on X to get these statements and put all the clips of women putting onions in their eyes and the cops fake arresting people and high-fiving and saying, I'm a federal agent, I just helped run the attack. They're going to string all these videos out.
So here's the thing. Like Brian said, there's probably some informants on the ground. I think one of the Proud Boys, one of the ladies in the Proud Boy was an informant. So she was on the ground. She didn't go into the Capitol building, I don't believe. The problem is with what Alex does is he pushes these conspiracy theories, these ideas that illegal aliens were voting. There's no evidence of that.
I think with the illegal alien voting thing is what's happening is they're coming in and then they're being counted in the census, which then adds more electoral votes.
Okay.
It gives more congressional districts.
That's fair. That might be happening. I haven't researched
There are indictments all over the country.
They're not voting.
Indictments of illegals everywhere voting. Got them again. Hit them hard. Hit them hard.
They're not voting.
They're not
Alex,
voting.
that's a conspiracy theory.
two people.
I know a
five?
bunch of cities have passed laws where illegal aliens can vote.
No, they haven't.
No,
Not in the federal election.
No, but the illegals are voting in elections though.
Not in the federal ones. So I know that some cities try to have them voting in like local matters. I don't know how many of those are successful.
Illegal aliens shouldn't be voting, okay? But they're not. They're not voting in federal elections.
I don't know why you would care though. Why would you even care? I don't know why you would care about.
There are going to be 100 million views of you guys. X is going to eat you guys alive.
I'm glad. I can't wait for it.
I don't know why you care about illegals voting when you think Trump can just flip the whole election anyway. Who cares? You can just ask Pence to throw it all out. And
I never said I thought Trump could flip the election.
Oh, do you think it was okay when he asked Pence to do it?
I already told you 5 times. I think that was a bad theory.
I didn't say it was a bad theory. Do you think it was allowed? Do you think it was an attempted coup? Do you think he can ask the vice president to unilaterally determine the outcome of the election?
No, Trump was exploring every option. The main thing he wanted was a 10-day investigation.
No, Trump wanted Pence to throw out the election to declare him the winner.
Imagine if Trump would say, like, I don't believe Joe Biden can be on the ballot. Imagine if federal judges...
And that will go to court, and the courts can decide that.
What would Republicans be doing right now?
Biden hasn't said that. Biden hasn't said that. States have.
Trump spent 4 years saying Obama should go on the ballot. I mean, what do you want to say?
If Republicans were trying to take Joe Biden on the ballot right now, what would you say?
Let the Supreme Court decide.
Depends on how they're trying to do it.
Even this conservative Supreme Court, I'd say let them decide.
Let's bring Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah, we should. But Darren, you've been
don't Republicans have an impeachment committee right now?
What are you, Darren? What's on your brain right now?
Isn't that trying to remove?
Looking at you thinking.
Well, I can attempt to answer the question about federal involvement because my reporting at Revolver News is largely responsible for changing the national conversation in that direction.
And notice they first threatened to sue you. I'm going to leave it a minute. Take a piss. They first threatened to sue you. Now they've indicted Epps. You've been vindicated.
Yeah, in fact, I have a video. This is about Ray Epps. You just mentioned, Alex. It's clip number 3, and it's about 25 seconds long.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've been trying to do like really long chunks because we have so much to get through, but I just really need to flag this. It is, I know it's like hours of us like breaking it down, right? But like how long could it have possibly been since the last time Alex got up to pee?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. I mean, that's why I think maybe someone
like
in the
45
chat
minutes,
last week.
yes?
Yeah, last week someone in the chat had a theory that he was going and having drinks in the back or something.
Honestly, that would be a better explanation. I mean, either that or like the man is having like a bladder issue that like he really needs to talk about with his doctor because like nobody should have to pee twice in a row this quickly.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Alex, if you're watching, we're either way. Honestly, we're concerned about you. Get yourself to a doctor or a meeting, but let's keep going.
Long. We're going to play this, and then Darren, I want to hear what you're about to say.
Okay.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. No! Peacefully. Fed. Tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested. Well, let's not say it. We need to go. I'll say it. All right. We need to go in.
Shut the fuck up, Boomer.
To the Capitol.
Oh, well, wait. Ray Epps didn't do anything because he said peacefully at the end, right? We can move past him.
He did say
no, he said go into the Capitol.
He said peacefully.
Well, so what? It's still illegal to go into the Capitol.
But I thought peacefully was the operative word. Yeah, I thought peacefully made it all okay.
No, going in is illegal. Trump didn't say storm the Capitol. He didn't say go into the Capitol.
He's going to get 6 months in prison. So
no, I mean, you guys want to hear the argument for federal involvement or not?
Go for it. Yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
All right. Well, there's a lot of dimensions to it. We can start with the Ray Epps issue. Here's a guy, you saw that was only part of the clip. There's much longer clips about Ray Epps, but here's a guy who's the only guy caught on camera as early as January 5th, repeatedly calling for people to go into the Capitol and prefacing his seemingly rehearsed remarks in each case, saying, I'm probably going to go to jail for this. I'm probably going to go get arrested for this. You need to go into the Capitol. The next day, he flew across the whole country, presumably to go hear Trump's speech. He skipped Trump's speech. Instead, he was a veritable Where's Waldo everywhere on January 6th, directing people, go into the Capitol. It's in that direction. That's where our problems are. Then, amazingly, he's pre-positioned right at that initial decisive breach point on the west perimeter of the Capitol, and he's whispering into somebody's ear just seconds before the bike racks are broken through. He texts his nephew, I orchestrated it. On paper, think about it, he's like a 6'3", former Marine who was wearing camo gear and a Trump hat, and he just happens to have had a leadership position in the Oath Keepers, the most demonized and heavily prosecuted.
He used to, right? He doesn't. He didn't anymore.
The most demonized and heavily prosecuted militia group associated with January 6th. And the regime doesn't touch him. However, initially, his behavior was considered to be so egregious, he was one of the first 20 people added to the FBI's most wanted list about January 6th. He was prominently featured in the New York Times' ominously titled Day of Rage. Of all the clips the New York Times could have found and chosen, they chose Ray Epps to represent their thesis that this was a pre-planned insurrection to storm the Capitol. And then when the discussion of federal involvement came into being, one of our major pieces at Revolver News, literally the next day is when the FBI quietly removed him from their list. And all of a sudden, he went from FBI's most wanted and featured in the New York Times' Day of Rage to New York Times does a fully dedicated puff piece on him. 60 Minutes does a sympathy segment on him. He's the only January 6th participant that Adam Kinzinger, who's never met a Trump supporter, he doesn't want to see rotting in jail for 50 years, that Adam Kinzinger will defend more aggressively than Epps's own lawyers. And now, almost 3 years after, the government finally says, okay, we're going to hit you with a wrist slap misdemeanor, as though people are so simple-minded to think, well, if the argument is hasn't been indicted, therefore he's a Fed, if we indict him now, even if it's a misdemeanor, even 3 years after, no matter what the circumstances, this constitutes a refutation and totally wipes away the mountains of suspicious evidence surrounding the character of Ray Epps. That's just the case of Epps. There are many other things.
Can I just touch on that real quick? So you mentioned a few things I want to touch on. So you talked about how he whispered in somebody's ear and moments later that guy went in the Capitol. That was Mr. Samsel.
Yep, that's right.
And Mr. Samsel actually testified under oath. I believe he was convicted. He said that Epps actually told him, calm down, the police are on our side.
He's changed his story. I wouldn't rest.
Did you write the original Revolver article?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I set aside 3 days to go over Ray Epps stuff, and it took me 6 hours to see it was one of the stupidest conspiracies I've ever seen in my entire life.
So the other thing I just want to
go for it real quick.
So you said that he didn't get convicted and he didn't get charged until
3 years later.
Okay, so the people who were charged with anything but misdemeanors were people who used violence and people who went into the House chamber where the joint session was, and the people who were involved in a seditious conspiracy. It had to be a conspiracy. Ray Epps acted alone here.
Well, no, I wouldn't. That's an open question.
As far as we can see, he acted alone. Anything else beyond that will just be a conspiracy theory. So he falls into the same category.
Well, seditious conspiracy is technically a conspiracy theory. It doesn't mean that it's not true, right?
Seditious conspiracy is a charge. A conspiracy theory is
a theory of the case.
A theory that there is a conspiracy that took place. So he doesn't fall into any category that any of the other protesters fall in, because he didn't fall into any of those three categories. So he got charged with a misdemeanor. Other people, the conspirators, the people who use violence, and the people who went into the House chamber are the ones who were charged with felonies.
For the Ray Epps stuff, if you look at his story from start to finish, it is incredibly obvious. The guy is a boomer. The guy was a huge Trump supporter.
No,
he used to be part of the Oath Keepers a while before. That's what he testified to under oath. He used to be part of the Oath Keepers years earlier than he'd left. I think it was the Arizona chapter. Ray Epps
was the head of the Arizona chapter.
That's fine. Ray Epps went to the march You said he skipped the speech. Tons of people were listening to the speech on cell phones and other things and broadcasting to other people. Ray Epps was outside the speech. There's on video, I know, because you posted in your article with him literally telling people, "Let's go, we're marching to the Capitol."
That was before the speech.
Sure, yeah,
began.
but he's out to the ellipse where
he's telling people in advance of the speech we need to go to the Capitol because somehow he got it in his mind that everything would end up at the Capitol.
I'm pretty sure he's doing it in his as Trump is making the speech, not before the speech has begun.
No,
it's when he's directing
he began
people.
Before the speech began. There are timestamps on the video.
Then you can go back and watch it on the Revolver stories up there. For every single thing that you assert about him, that he's in video whispering into a guy's ear, you say it in the rest of your article, all he's doing on the day of when the protesting is getting violent is going up and down telling people, don't fight with the cops. Don't fight with the cops. The cops are on our side. That's what he's saying the entire time. The idea that he said that the entire day, but the one guy whose ear that he whispered into that unfortunately we don't have, audio capture of, that he and Samuel testified to, is he said, hey, the cops are on our side or the cops aren't enemies. They both say something to that effect. And that seems to synergize with everything else he said on that day. You go on to say that guy immediately after was the one that broke down the fence. No, he's not. You can see like 15 people right next to him that are all trying to break down the fence. Yeah, the guy goes in eventually. But if we truly believe that this guy is a federal agent or is working to instigate the riot, we've laid out absolutely nothing supporting that. Just some video footage of another boomer being at the rally.
No.
That was there. If you want to say that, why was he removed from the FBI list? I mean, why was he removed from the FBI list? Like, all of the information is out there. He said that after his video was identified and people on X started to identify him, and then because all of his online stuff is incredibly easy to find, he started to get phone calls, he started to get harassed, he started to get threats. So he called the FBI as soon as this was brought to his attention, and he told the FBI, hey, this was me, and here I am, and this is what's happening. And the FBI took him off the list.
No,
you want to claim
wrong.
That there was some...
Your timeline is wrong. He called the FBI
when he saw himself in the videos.
Wrong.
Yeah, a friend told him about it, and that's what he said. That's what he testified.
He called the FBI very shortly after January 6th because of his picture being on the most wanted list. He wasn't taken off the most wanted list until the middle part of 2021. There were multiple months span between him calling the FBI in the first instance and being quietly removed.
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
No, that's not true.
Well, I mean,
I can tell you why it's not true, okay? Because what you did, because I read your article, is you looked at 2 archived versions of the website and you didn't have a 12-month archive. For some reason, you assumed that the recent snapshot that you took at 2021, you think that was the first time the page has been changed. That was just the first time the page has been archived. Well, I don't think the FBI has made a statement on it, but what Epps testified to was that he either saw a video of himself or a friend saw a video of himself or a friend saw him on the list where people were making videos, and then he called the FBI and he said, hey, I need to talk to you and this is what's going on. If he was a Fed, why would they remove him from the list when everybody's clearly looking at the list? He was like one of the only people removed. Why would senators be defending him so vigilantly? Why wouldn't...
That's a great question. Why was he quietly removed right when the question of federal involvement became a major part of the national conversation? And let me just... I don't want to get lost in these weeds. I just want to say something quickly. So you're saying, he said, we need to go into the Capitol peacefully. And you point out correctly that in many instances caught on video, he's engaged in what you could call de-escalation of the crowd, and he's not urging people to violence. That's all correct. I never said he's urging people to violence. He was absolutely a provocateur, and his mission, as stated and as implemented and as orchestrated by his own verbatim text, was he wanted people to go into the Capitol peacefully.
That might be the case. Wait, that might be the case. And if that's all you're saying,
it's not all. No, that's everything. That's everything.
Nobody here is saying that he didn't say that and he didn't want people to do that. But the claim is that there's some sort of...
That's illegal.
That's fine. And he can be charged for it. Do you think anybody's here care if he gets charged for that crime? The issue is you're saying that he was doing it under the direction of a federal agency.
Yeah,
the 6'3" guy that looks like he's dying of type 2 diabetes and arthritis is somehow some intimidating Marine captain that's sending people into the Capitol. That was your claim that you've provided zero evidence for, and you don't in either of the articles that you write about him.
We've got Glenn back on the horn. And Glenn, we've been talking about Ray Epps. We played a video. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Not Glenn Beck.
Did I say Glenn?
Greenwald.
Greenwald.
The other
Thanks, Glenn. That's so funny, Glenn.
They're hard to tell the difference between nowadays.
Glenn,
Glenn has been very patient. You should hear from Glenn Greenwald.
That's so funny. What's happened, dude?
Well, I only heard the last 4 minutes of the conversation, but I'm still always amazed I really don't understand the argument, because the FBI and the U.S. security state before January 6th was saying that they regard the greatest threat to national security, not as being ISIS or Al Qaeda or Hamas or Hezbollah or China or any other foreign threat. They regard the greatest threat as being right-wing domestic extremists, in whom that was included on many lists: the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, and all of the people in the groups that they said orchestrated January 6th. Is the argument that you think that the FBI was not monitoring and infiltrating those groups? Because there's actually a ton of evidence that the FBI had their hooks in all three of those groups, and not only had their hooks in them, but on January 6th had informants on the ground who were pretending to be Trump supporters, who were talking in real time to the FBI about everything that was happening. So I just want to understand what the claim is. Is the claim that the FBI was not involved in the groups that organized January 6th and didn't have informants with them that day?
They weren't instigating. That's your claim.
It came out that the vice president of the Oath Keepers was an FBI informant. The Proud Boys had at least 3 and as many as 8. And the New York Times itself reported that there were FBI informants in the Proud Boys who were inside the Capitol texting their handlers as the event unfolded.
So they recorded the garage. They recorded the garage meeting the day before, and the Fed said to court nothing was said violent or no planning.
Yeah. Brian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So I'm just confused. So you're saying that Ray Epps was actually a federal agent who was indicted, who pled guilty, and is likely going to get 6 months in prison? Is that your argument?
Well, the New York Times protected.
Well, wait. So about Epps, so a couple of things there. You don't find it a little bit strange? Wait. I'll get to you. I promise you. I promise you I'll address that. But let's just consider the context. The context in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, by the words of Steve Sherwin, who is in charge of the prosecution, their posture was one of quote unquote shock and awe. They were going after everyone. They were hitting them very hard. Now, again, think about central casting. On paper, Ray Epps, he's the 6'3", former Marine in camouflage gear with a Trump hat, the only guy caught on video as early as the 5th telling people to go into the Capitol, who's there on the 6th directing people to the Capitol, who's right there pre-positioned at that initial breach phase. And this helping ram signs. Exactly. And he happens to be a former head of the Oath Keepers. And you're not telling me it's bizarre. Wait a second. You're not telling me it's at least a little bit bizarre that of all January 6 participants, he's the only one who gets a New York Times puff piece. He's the only one who gets a 60 minutes sympathy segment. He's the only one that Adam Kinzinger will defend.
So are you saying that New York Times is now working with the feds, working with Ray Epps?
100%.
Yes. No, as a matter of fact,
question
yes.
is, why do you think? Why do you think they all wrote those articles?
Why did they say they were WMDs in Iraq? Because they're told to.
So going back.
Why did they write those articles? Why don't you say that part? Why did they write those articles?
I want to address your question directly. You're saying if he were an asset, and by the way, I'm not definitive in the sense that, I don't think he was working directly for the FBI. I don't even know if he was directly working for the federal government. He was an asset. He was acting on behalf of a third party. He was not an authentic actor on that day. That I will say with a great deal of confidence. But wait a second.
Victory. Let me say one thing. I've been gone for 10 minutes. It's a victory. They went from saying he's an angel, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times. He's perfectly now. They've been forced to indict him.
Alex, quick thing on that. The criminal complaint acknowledges that he engaged in quote unquote felonious behavior. But among the mitigating factors that they cite is, this poor guy was a victim of all these conspiracy theories, which is pretty remarkable.
He was, though. He was.
I want to address
this. And he did it for any of the other people.
Why don't you answer why were people writing?
I want to just quickly answer the question about your question. Basically, if he was an asset, why did they go after their own asset? Why would they indict their own asset? That happens all the time. In fact, that's almost the norm, that ultimately
in the mafia, when they have undercover people, they'll indict them just as a cover.
When the assets become liabilities, they indict them. In fact, we don't have to go too far into the past to get a case of that. There is the Michigan Fednapping case, or the Michigan kidnapping case, where there is the informant, Steve Robeson, who is a long-time, over decade-long informant, who was part of the entrapment scheme in Michigan case with striking parallels to January 6th, by the way. And he, when he became inconvenient, was indicted by the government. There's so many
for breaking
cases.
the law,
I think
for
we
actually
need-
breaking the law.
We need a better argument.
I want to get my point in really fast. I haven't been able to get my point in. So you're saying that Ray Epps is a federal agent.
Well, I didn't say that.
Well,
I said he was acting on behalf of a third party. He was an inauthentic actor on January
even though there's
6th.
no evidence of this. And then you're saying he's turning around and he's suing Fox News for defamation, which is going to open up all sorts of cans of worms with discovery that he's going to have to provide legally in front of a court. You think that if he was a federal agent, he'd be suing Fox News for defamation?
They know they control the jurisdiction, but he did say in a text message that day during it, I orchestrated the attack.
You think he's going to sue for defamation?
Respond to that.
Sue for defamation.
He was bragging to his nephew that asked him if he was there.
And he said, I orchestrated it.
He said, I orchestrated it.
To his nephew.
To his nephew.
Well, it's a nephew.
Why would a federal agent text such incriminating evidence to his nephew?
Why wasn't he indicted before? We made him the centerpiece. They had congressional hearings. He was all over the news. They were forced to do it thanks to Tucker Carlson and Professor Darren Beatty's work.
Wait, why do you trust Tucker Carlson when he said he lied to you? Tucker Carlson said Sidney Powell was crazy. Tucker Carlson left Fox News because he didn't believe the election fraud claims that he was being forced to push on TV because of Trump. Why would you trust Tucker Carlson of all people?
Tucker early on thought it was wrong. Now he says he was wrong about that. Now he says he thinks the election.
Oh, crazy! So when the lawsuit goes away, when his lawsuit goes away, the answers change.
You know, listen, whether you're right or wrong, you have a right to question the elections. The Democrats do
no one wants to take that right from you.
Brian, you were saying?
Yes.
Can I say something here? Because
yes,
I think
Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, go ahead.
The whole context for this conversation is, again, I mean, you just keep going back to it because it's so easy to see. People have this idea of the FBI, like, oh, they don't do this sort of thing. Earlier, I think it was Ed who said, wait, why would the New York Times run a puff piece? Do you think they're working with the FBI? Like, that idea to him is so foreign.
I didn't say that. It was me.
No idea what the history of the FBI is in this country. They have no idea that the FBI throughout the entire war on terror did this over and over. They would target and entrap all sorts of vulnerable Muslims to engage in plots that the FBI created in order to create a narrative that the FBI was needed because there was a much bigger threat of Islamic terrorism than there actually was. The FBI has been infiltrating and then using provocateurs to encourage groups to commit crimes so that the FBI can gain more power, can spread this narrative. You have to be incredibly naive or only paying attention to the news since 2016 and thinking Donald Trump is the only issue, not to understand that this is what the FBI has been doing for decades. And so to have this like naive attitude, like, oh, is the New York Times working with the FBI? That is what the media in this country has been doing.
But you have no evidence of it. You're just making theories up.
By the way, if I can just add a nice little colorful detail there, the author of the Ray Epps puff piece that asked none of the questions that would get to the core of his involvement there. It's total puff piece. You can read it yourself. The author of that, his previous work includes the CIA authorized account of the Sinaloa cartel.
Yeah,
so
the idea of the New York Times,
say
the idea of the New York Times is doing cleanup work for the deep state's insane. What Glenn Greenwald was saying is key. I remember the New York Times headline. They can pull it up in there. We're not showing videos or clips. It would be too much here. I remember the New York Times headline like 15 years ago, 97% of Islamic terror plots were hatched and run by the FBI. That was the headline.
We're getting so far
including
away from
the first
point,
World Trade Center bombing, by the way, which is
Alex, just one really quick thing. You said Ray Epps was one of the last to be charged. He isn't the last to be charged. There's 1,200 people that have been charged. 1,250, I believe.
Who said he's the last to be charged?
Alex said they waited 3 years.
Yeah, they waited 3 years. That's
do you realize that they're still indicting people and they expect that they're probably going to...
They had puff pieces. He was on ABC.
Let me finish my point, Alex.
God.
So do you realize that they're still indicting people? There's likely going to be hundreds of people still indicted. Ray Epps didn't get any less a sentence than anybody else that did anything like it.
Well, first of all, they could have hit him with far more serious charges than they did.
He addressed me.
Well, what would the charge be?
Let me respond.
That's an interesting charge. What charge do you recommend? What charge would have been a fair charge?
May I respond to what you said?
Yeah, let Alex respond, and then I want to hear Darren's response.
My God. The man is like a chicken with his head cut off for 3 days, including the day of the event, running around saying, go in the Capitol. He's ramming signs into people. He testifies, I orchestrated this attack.
He did not testify.
And then there was a Jan 6 committee. They asked about this text message. He said, I did that.
The text. He didn't testify that he orchestrated.
No, he testified to the Jan 6 committee.
That he sent the message to his nephew.
No, he testified to the Jan.
That he orchestrated it to the Jan 6 committee?
You keep interrupting because you can't. I'm
not telling the truth.
I'm Michael Jordan slamming on you. And what's going to happen is everybody's going to get this clip.
Yep.
He testified to the Jan 6 committee. They said, "Is this your text message?"
Yes.
He said, "Yes, I told my nephew I orchestrated it." Now stop. Let me finish my point.
Okay.
Thank
you for being honest with us.
You keep honest. He said I orchestrated it. You keep acting like
he testified that he said to his nephew that he said that.
Yes. In a text message.
Okay, there you go.
And he did orchestrate
So he did testify.
He did.
So the point is, you keep acting like my victory is a failure.
Wait, where's the evidence that he orchestrated it? I'd love to see
He
that.
said it.
But
Oh
to
my
his
God.
nephew, I
Oh my God,
text
so
I
nephew,
text
it
my
doesn't
friends
matter.
things all the time that are
Let me finish my point.
embellishments.
Because you guys, let me finish my point. They're all over every major corporate channel saying this poor little baby. They're saying he was a Fed or an operative or a provocateur for some NGO. He didn't do anything wrong. And when it got so obvious, they finally indicted him with a slap on the wrist. And then you're sitting here saying he didn't testify. He just testified. Whoa.
No, he said he didn't testify that he orchestrated it. He testified that he sent that text to his nephew.
Then he orchestrated it.
But no, then they asked him, no, Alex, then they asked him if he actually orchestrated it. What was his answer?
In the transcript, he said,
it wasn't that he orchestrated it.
so if I send somebody a message saying a bank is robbed, I robbed the bank.
Have you ever embellished a text message to anybody that you know? Like you, like I maybe not you. I can't see you doing that, but maybe.
Actually, I'm kind of an understanding.
Yeah, Alex, you started bringing up a good point. If I send a text message saying I robbed the bank, can I get charged with robbing a bank if I didn't do it?
If they got evidence, he's there.
Exactly. They need the evidence.
And it's not like he's there saying go into the building.
They need
it's
the
not like
evidence,
he's there
though.
saying go into and ramming signs. You're right. He's not there saying go in for 3 days.
What
he's
should
not
he be
there ramming
charged
signs. You're right. Ray Epps is innocent. He's not there ramming signs.
Can we get back to
or
my
saying
question?
go
Not
in.
innocent.
you asked a question.
Yeah, so my question
You guys
is,
are indefensible.
my question is, what should Ray Epps have been charged with? What law did he break that instead of what he was charged with, I think, was obstructing the proceeding?
Let me respond.
No, he
He
was
has
not
been charged
charged
with.
with that. That's the interesting thing.
He was charged with
He
what
was
it?
not charged with obstruction of an
Oh my
official
God.
proceeding, which would have been a very easy charge and a fairly typical felony
Disorderly
charge
conduct.
given to.
There is
Exactly.
a-
So wait, let me answer this comprehensively. So first of all, it's extremely strange given how conspicuous and egregious and concentrated his behavior was that he somehow was able to avoid the obstruction of official proceeding charge. Number one. Number two, there are even more serious charges they could have given him. In fact, in the series of videos that we put out, there's one specific exchange he had with another guy. He said, when we go in, leave this here. We don't want to get shot. So when we go in, leave this here, he's referring to that individual's bear spray. That individual ends up going into the Capitol, committing violence and doing a whole bunch of other things. And this is a bizarre case because this guy, who is super egregious, has to this day not fully been charged. His case hasn't even gone to a district judge yet.
So the obstruction case.
So let me give you a sense. Let me give you a sense. Because when we're evaluating these things, we have to compare them to standards applied to others.
Let me stop you. You'll go next. Owen Schroyer, I've known him 8 years. He's a badass guy that helps disabled children and is literally like a super good person. No criminal issues in his life other than protesting. He is with me saying, don't go in.
All right. Victor, you're literally a super good guy. Do you have any thoughts? No, I keep waiting. Like we kind of gotten past. I'm trying to do long chunks, but we got past the last point I was going to pause. But then I kept waiting because I was hoping that they would stop talking about fucking Ray Epps and start talking about something more interesting. We could pause and talk about that. But they're still on Ray Epps, and it kind of feels like they're going to stay on Ray Epps for the foreseeable future. I don't really understand why, because I guess I understand why they ended up on this, but like, as far as I can tell, there's absolutely nothing at stake here that matters. Because, if this one particular guy like was an agent provocateur, or if he wasn't, I'm really unclear. about how either of those claims would actually intersect with any of the important things that they've been talking about, the entire time, right? So, I'm kind of, like, on one level, like, I'm a little bored by this, but like, I also think if we're going to call balls and strikes about this, it seems like what it gets down to is just, Alex, Glenn, Darren, think that there's circumstantial evidence that he's a Fed, and Destiny and Krassensteins think that it's not actually that good. But like, I don't know. I mean, like, just based on the last 20 minutes of them yammering about Ray Epps, like, I think probably the circumstantial evidence is not that great. But like, also, if it turned out, right, if like some direct evidence came to light tomorrow, I don't know that would change anything I think about any of this one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well, the feeling, because this is definitely one of the topics also where and I think I saw someone in the chat say like, oh wow, I need to get up on my Ray Epps lore here, because it's just like there's just so much background info, and like I did appreciate that that Destiny seemed very prepared for it, at least, because like Darren Beatty started like talking about all this stuff, and of course I'm kind of looking at it from an outsider perspective. I didn't read the Darren Beatty piece, and I don't know like the case, but it was good to at least see that it sounded like he spent a lot of time with the article responding to it, and it does kind of sound like the evidence is like maybe very circumstantial. I did actually see the 60-minute story about Ray Epps like maybe a few months ago that talked about how he's now he went from allegedly being a very rabid Trump supporter to like now getting death threats from fellow Trump supporters, right, who think he's a Fed and stuff, and like that was kind of what the 60-minute story was about. But it was interesting to me. Again, maybe because I have higher expectations for Glenn Greenwald, that I was like paying a lot of attention to what he was saying. And I just thought it was kind of interesting. Like, I'm sure he's right that the FBI does that stuff all the time, because his kind of thing was like, you're so naive, you think that the FBI wouldn't do something like this, but they do this stuff all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure that's true. But like, setting aside all the stuff you just said, Ben, about like that this doesn't matter, but like, let's just stay in the world where it does matter. Like, but none of what you're saying, Glenn, is actually evidence for the specific case of Ray Epps, right? All he seemed to say was like, FBI does this all the time, therefore it could be the case that Ray Epps was FBI. And I'm just like, God, it's just disappointing. And also, last thing I did think it was kind of amusing. If you caught Destiny's little zinger at like, because I think the host like said Glenn Beck by accident or something at one point, and then he was like, oh, like, sorry, I meant Greenwald. And I think like Destiny said something like, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell the difference these days.
Yeah. It was actually probably a more effective line, because Destiny doesn't do that much of that. Yeah. I mean, I guess I agree that like was a really bad argument. I mean, I guess maybe to be charitable, the part of it that was like there was like a germ of a good point was that there were points where Destiny and the Krassensteins had been like sort of suggesting it was ridiculous to think that like, the FBI or other intelligence agencies would like influence the media, about how to report things. And I think he was right about that. But overall, it's like, okay, but sure. I mean, like if there's a plane crash, right? Like, and people are saying that like Al-Qaeda blew up the plane, then like Al-Qaeda blows things up a lot, right? Like isn't a good enough reason to think that they're right? If there's if like some like demented Russiagate libs are like saying that they owe some story about Hunter Biden is Russian disinformation, just say, well, yeah, look, the US and Russia do this to each other all the time. They try to like, they try to plant, news stories to, conceal like they're going to cause problems or whatever. Like that's not a good enough reason to think that they're right. Right. Like like it just seems like the very least he's like moving the goalposts a little bit to like, is this the kind of thing that's outside of the realm of imagination to that from where it was actually at, which is like, do we have good reasons to think it happened in this specific case?
Right. And I thought it was like, it's part of the reason it didn't strike me as that persuasive of a point. This whole like, well, 60 Minutes and the New York Times are writing puff pieces about this guy. It's like, I don't know, like there are other plausible reasons. Like for one, like it makes Trump supporters look bad and deranged that they're like attacking this guy, kind of similar to how like, when some like leftist is like getting like mass, some popular leftist is getting like mass shit on by other leftists, like, PragerU is like very quick to reach out and be like, hey, want to talk about your experience with all these deranged lefties you're dealing with? Hey,
Right,
look,
exactly.
even this lefty is getting attacked by the left. It could be like similar to that. Yeah, and it's just like more broadly, it's just like, it's always weird to me when people make these points where it's like, oh, like here's some like data point that like my kind of thesis here is able to explain, but the only way their thesis is able to explain it is by like adding on to what their thesis is. Like, oh, by the way, the New York Times and 60 Minutes are kind of in on this conspiracy,
Right.
and like positing that extra baggage is the only way they can explain what they're trying to explain.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking about that too, that like the puff piece thing actually seemed like the weakest thing that Dan and Glenn and Alex and Darren were pointing to as circumstantial evidence, because it's like, well, this doesn't actually seem like it requires an explanation. Like that, like, yeah, I mean, look, this is the guy who like people kept claiming he was a Fed and like harassing him because they thought he was a Fed, and one. That's just an interesting story. So that alone means that it's like more likely that he's going to get like these kinds of write-ups than like any other, Trump supporter or any other like January 6th rioter. And then like two, yeah, look, especially if you assume, which all of these guys do, right, that the mainstream media is like very anti-Trump, right? Then like, they're especially likely to write that story because it makes Trump people, as you say, look deranged. So it's like, yeah, this seems like on both hypotheses, right? Like in fact, like it's not. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the he's not a Fed hypothesis has no trouble whatsoever explaining, right, why he would get like puff pieces that that other January 6th protesters or rioters didn't get. That's I mean, I think that was actually a really stupid point on their part, but let's see if we can plunge. And I guess to be fair, I said their part. I don't remember if Glenn said anything like that. That might have just been Darren and Alex, but whoever said it, right? It's a bad argument. So I think you're totally right about that.
They charge him, and in the charging documents say Owen's lying. He doesn't work for InfoWars. That's in the charging documents, the sentencing documents. The judge says, I'm putting you in these months in federal prison because you just questioned the election again and gave 3 examples of where he did it.
No.
So Owen spends months in a federal prison.
Why don't you talk about the deferred agreement that he had in 2019?
No, I agree. I will. Code Pink runs around and protesting. He put tape over his mouth when they were letting leftists run around and throw red paint in Congress. And they said, sir, you can't do that.
And he agreed that he wouldn't do it. And he did.
And then he didn't protest. He went there to cover it as a journalist.
He was in a restricted area, though.
No, he was on. Listen, Ray Epps has not spent. Listen. Owen is there with me saying, don't go in. He agreed he would not protest. He was there saying, don't go in the Capitol. And you're not going to defend him going to prison.
But he pled guilty to everything that he got charged with.
Because it's a rigged DC court.
Or he.
Oh, you laughed because that happened to you.
Or you could
It's
explain.
funny because like the problem is on our side. We've got testimony under oath. We've got judicial rulings. We've got jury trials. We've got full videos.
Everybody's got the video.
We have all of these. We have all of these pieces of evidence.
And you say
I can't finish a single statement.
Yeah,
the problem is.
Let me tell you something. My reporter deserves to go to jail for being there and trying to keep people in the building.
He had a deferment. He pled guilty.
Yeah, what do you do in a rigged DC court?
fight your case.
Yeah.
Oh,
if you're innocent, fight. If you have evidence that you're innocent, fight. But there was no evidence because he broke the agreement that he signed, and then he pled guilty and said, I broke the agreement that I signed and agreed to the sentence that the sentencing guidelines.
And Trump shouldn't be able to run for office.
Also, this entire argument has been you, again, arguing for an insurrection, for rebellion. All we have, everything we have over here is actual testimony under oath, actual judicial rulings, actual rulings by judges, actual rulings by Supreme Court. I can't finish. I have to be able to finish. I got to be able to finish. Well, I got to be able to finish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We can provide these arguments. We can provide the evidence. We can provide the testimony. And all you do is go, oh, well, I don't trust the courts. Oh, well, I don't trust statements made under oath. Oh, well, hasn't the FBI done this in the past? You can skirt by providing hard evidence. I got to be able to finish one thing.
You know how much
you can skirt by. You can skirt by on providing any hard evidence for literally a single claim that you've made today. There hasn't been any evidence provided to support any of the claims made today. And you are hand brushing away every single other claim that's made, literally testified under oath by people that were loyal to Trump, by people that Trump trusted over and over and over again. And at the end of the day, like, what could you possibly be advocating for besides an insurrection? I can't even finish a thing.
You just said,
I think it's because when I talk, you get really afraid. I actually respect. I appreciate that.
You just said,
I understand. Okay.
You just said, when I defended Owen, you just said, here you are advocating for insurrection again. Exact quote. A guy saying, don't go in the Capitol as a reporter, and you don't even stand up for the First Amendment. Or
you don't trust the court. Do you trust the courts?
I don't think most Americans do. And that's when you have real revolution.
If you don't trust the court, real revolution. What do we do in a real revolution?
Hey, listen, we're not trying to go there right now.
We are there right now. We just were. It's January 6th.
Listen,
if there was any time to go there,
don't worry.
Don't touch me.
Listen. If there is one,
where would you?
If there is one, you're going to lose.
Sure.
Buddy.
Okay. We'll see. Okay. Where is didn't like 4 people dying on January 6th from obesity and meth? If these are the people we have to fight, I think we'll be okay.
Ashley Babbitt, you're dehumanizing her? Was she on meth?
I don't think she was one of the 4 that died from meth. She died from the gunshot.
No, did she deserve to be shot?
She was trying to climb into an area where federal agents were saying, if you climb in here, I'm going to shoot you.
Federal gods?
Federal
if
gods?
It was your house,
I'm sorry, do federal agents not have the right to shoot people?
So you would have pulled the trigger on her. You like that?
If I was one of the federal agents there and I thought it was appropriate to do so,
Their job is to protect the people inside.
Do I like that? No, you guys were the ones cheering on the other side of that.
All right, I think
I was cheering.
We got a little
you guys were cheering for it the entire time.
Talking about Owen, we got a little.
Wait, I want to know, what do we do if we don't trust the courts? We don't trust the courts. We don't trust the president. We don't trust.
Julian Assange deserve to be in prison.
What? I'm not here to talk about Julian Assange or the rest of your friends. Okay, tell me, what do we do if we don't trust? There's a reason he won't answer the question. The reason why is because he answers rebellion and insurrection. There's a reason why they marched.
We are going to get back to.
I talked about Owen, who was there peacefully and said, don't go in. And he said, you're defending insurrection. Everybody's going to play that quote. That's not true.
Okay, I think, and you know what I agree? I think claiming that is a defensive insurrection is different. You were defending maybe Owen?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to get back to Darren because there was a question that was, we took a tangent. And also, Glenn, I think you look like you're about to say something. So if you wanted to speak first.
Yeah, let Darren go ahead first on just to close the Ray Epps thing, but I do want to say something as well about what I've been hearing.
I'm fine.
What charges do you think he should have got?
Oh, I think he could and should have gotten far more serious charges. The first example is the easiest and most readily available: obstruction of official proceeding, which is basically the standard charge for people who've done far less egregious things than Epps.
No, but it really isn't, though, because the only people charged with that, I believe, are the people who went into the House chamber.
No.
The people that walked through the Capitol did not get charged with that.
First of all, that's not the case. And second of all, that's not an ironclad law. That's not an ironclad law pertaining to the application of that charge. Secondly, there's a far more serious conspiracy charge that the government had available to them if we use the standards that they've applied in similar January 6 cases.
Yeah, he was way worse than Joe Biggs or Stuart Rhodes. I mean, he's literally, we're Stuart Rhodes saying invade the Capitol. We're Stuart Rhodes attacking people or ramming signs. Ray Epps did that.
Stuart Rhodes literally said that if Trump doesn't impose the Insurrection Act, that we need an insurrection. And he said, storm the Capitol. And he went into the Capitol and he hurt police officers.
He did not go to the Capitol.
He called for people
that is
Joe Biggs did. Joe Biggs went in the Capitol.
You just said
Joe Biggs or Stuart Rhodes. Either Joe Biggs or Stuart Rhodes.
Stuart Rhodes did not do that.
No, one of them, I forget which one it
Joe
was.
Biggs.
He said that.
Yeah, Joe got
No, you don't even know what I'm going to say.
He deserves a year in jail. He doesn't deserve.
You don't know what I'm going to say, though. One of them called for people to defend the White House and shoot to kill The national
Let
guard
me
or any
just
other
answer really
authorities
quickly.
By the way, that's
try to
true.
take
Let me
Trump
say
out of the
something.
White
Stuart
House.
Rhodes did say that on air, and I told him he was wrong to his face. So I'm going to be honest.
Wait a second.
He
One
did,
thing.
before it happened, he did say if Trump calls us out for a civil war, and I was like, dude, I'm not for this on air.
One
So
thing,
you're right.
very,
That's true.
very quickly.
I agree. There's a lot of rhetoric on both sides.
You wanted
That's
an
true.
example of somebody who didn't go into the Capitol who got obstruction of the official proceeding?
Yeah.
Thomas Caldwell. That's
What
one of
did
many.
he do? I'm not familiar.
Well,
I'm going
I
to be
mean-
honest. Stuart Rhodes did say what he just said.
So
And I think you guys confused that Ed O'Brien over there. I'm sorry.
You put that. So if you put that together with
No, I get there was some rhetoric.
Right.
It was dangerous.
So I mean, if you put that together with the planning, him and Biggs were planning on two different ends, one Oath Keepers, one.
There's no
Proud Boys.
proof they planned it.
Well, if you look at the Telegram messages,
An undercover agent recorded the conversation in the garage.
but have you looked at the Telegram messages where they're basically instructing people where to go and where they're at and that saying, hey, we stormed the Capitol, we took the Capitol.
Yeah, there's no doubt there was LARPing without Trump's directives of some people talking about that.
All right,
Wait,
we're gonna.
so, but why don't we trust their messages, but we do trust Ray Epps bragging to his nephew that he
Good
orchestrated?
point.
Well,
No,
why-
I just
why-
said they were talking about it.
We're gonna go. Yeah,
She
Glenn.
is being honest.
Let's let Glenn finish this one off because then I have another question for you guys.
Yeah, the whole thing, like listening to them, I honestly, it's like listening. I don't mean to be insulting. I'm just saying this, it's what it sounds like seventh graders who learn civics class and have this understanding of how the US government works. Like, oh, the FBI investigate and they discover crimes and then they go to the courts and the courts are very honest and the courts are apolitical and the courts make rulings and everything that has happened in January 6th. And you can even look at the people they picked and choose who to expand the law. The people who ended up getting prosecuted on felony counts, even though they were nonviolent, had these incredibly novel interpretations of law that were used against them to turn nonviolent demonstration and nonviolent political protest into felony by taking this post-Enron law and giving it a stretched meaning that it never had before. And the reason so many of them plead guilty is because they know that if they go into court, they're going to have rulings against them because a lot of these judges, especially in Washington, are not only Democratic Party judges, but the entire system is furious to watch people go and put their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk. So the entire system decided that this has to be punished regardless of what the law provides. You had the FBI with their hooks inside all of these groups. But I do understand that if you believe in this story of American propaganda, that the FBI is these upstanding law enforcement people and they don't do that, and then the courts go and make rulings, then you're going to end up with this image of what the three of them have, which is this idea that this was one of the worst attacks in American history. The courts have ruled. Everything the government did in this case is consistent with their longstanding view before January 6th, that these groups are criminal groups. They need to be criminalized. Trump's movement is a threat to the United States, and the entire part of January 6th was designed to define them as an insurrectionary movement so that they could criminalize them, which is exactly what they're doing.
809. Wait, I want to respond to Glenn real quick.
Owen didn't have the money for a criminal trial.
890 convictions or guilty pleas. 2 acquittals, 2. 890 to 2. So is that
Go
ahead, Glenn.
Were accused of violence?
They're not convicted of insurrection.
I believe 170 or so were for violent
Illegal
acts.
parading.
Exactly, a tiny number, a small percentage.
Yeah, and the
of
Supreme Court is, and they should be.
You got to make.
Let Glenn talk. Go ahead.
Understand that usually what happens in the United States with nonviolent protesters or even with violent protesters is they don't get charged with anything. A tiny percentage of people who use violence throughout all of the Black Lives Matter protests ended up in jail because the ideology in which they were protesting was one that was considered positive and friendly by the institutions of authority. They were on the side of Black Lives Matter. They didn't prosecute that. The Trump movement and the right-wing extremists, as the government calls them, are considered enemies of the state. And that was why the entire law enforcement mechanisms were distorted.
If you want to actually make these...
Let me just back up Glenn briefly and I'll shut up.
Let me finish.
I'll take a 5-minute break.
One second. Well, let me finish. It's not the same to compare Black Lives Matter protesters and protesters who entered the Capitol building during the certification of the election. Those are not, that's like
Democrats have bombed the U.S. Capitol. Democrats have bombed it.
Courthouses and burned down police stations. And they had within them people who were insurrectionary.
And they got charged, and as they should have. They got charged.
Barely any of them got charged.
There are plenty of them that were charged. There are plenty that were charged.
Can I just say one thing? I'm going to say one thing. I'm going to take a break here.
Yeah, we're actually all going to be taking a short 5-minute break
I'm going to go
here
to
in a
some more
moment.
iced tea.
But Alex,
I'm just going to say this right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we saw billions of dollars of stuff burned down. We saw all the killings, and we never said all Democrats are involved in that. Biden gave a speech yesterday that was Hitlerian, in my view, literally saying everyone in D.C. was a terrorist. They're all bad. You can't vote for Trump. We're taking him off the ballot. America's going into martial law to stop him. Our republic is in danger. I got the transcript right here.
Yeah, what quote him where he says that? Everyone in D.C. is a terrorist. That's a Biden direct quote. No, is that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden?
I know you love Hunter, but the point is, this was a hysterical diatribe. This is dangerous.
So, Alex, what if instead of the Capitol was the White House, and there's thousands of people at the White House fence, and they push through the fence? Do you think those people deserve more of a criminal penalty than people that were rioting in, I don't know, L.A.?
No, I mean, if it turns out they were under the directive of a foreign power.
It was just a bunch of Americans.
Do they kill a cop? It's the crime they commit.
If a bunch of Americans, when Trump was in the White House, stormed the White House fences
guns,
with weapons, and
like Ashley Babbitt got shot?
No, made it past the fence.
The Trump supporter shot Ashley Babbitt. Okay,
made it past the fence, and they were at the doors of the White House. Do you think that they would act?
When Trump asked for the National Guard to stop that, Milley said no.
Trump didn't ask for the National Guard.
He didn't ask for the National Guard.
Milley's on record saying, I threatened to resign if Trump puts troops.
That wasn't January 6th. That was weeks before.
You just said about the White House.
Yeah, but nobody.
See, I'm giving you specifics.
Nobody was actually.
I'm giving you specifics.
Did anybody cross police barricades into the White House?
You know what I saw was the police, after a little bit of a fight, open the doors and wave people in, and a bunch of them.
They didn't wave people in.
Oh my God! Everybody, get the footage.
There's one clip out of 40,000 hours.
There's hundreds.
There's no hundreds of clips of people waving people through the door. What I saw were people breaking the windows, climbing through broken windows, unlocking multiple doors, and letting other people in. Once in, police were forced to basically de-escalate the situation and make sure that the Congress people were protected. At that point, they were outnumbered 10-1, the Capitol Police to the rioters. At that point, those videos where they're walking alongside people, they're funneling them into the rotunda.
I was there.
You weren't in the Capitol, and I give you credit for that. You knew when to turn around.
Well, the Wall Street Journal said I was cowardly on top of a car commanding people to invade. But thank God Jack Posobiec, because I didn't have a Twitter then, put the video out of me saying don't go in. I got there in the middle of it. Man,
I'm glad you didn't, and you made the right decision.
When you're there with 300,000 people, it's 1 million in town, and they don't even know what's happening in front of them. They're being guided in. A lot of those innocent people that just walked to the Capitol have been sent to prison.
All right, we're going to take we're not going to be taking a break. Maybe, but I want to ask you guys, talking about these people in prison, these prison sentences. So I want to talk to you briefly about if you think these prison sentences that some of these people are getting are justified or not. And then we're going to be taking questions from the audience from Zero Hedge Premium. So if you haven't signed up at zerohedge.com, sign up for the premium service, and you may be able to get a question in before we wrap. But what do you guys think? I mean, let me start with you, Darren, because I haven't heard from you.
By the way, I don't want to wrap. I mean, I say take a break. A lot of people are tuning in now. I'll keep having this debate all day long.
Yeah, we might keep going. But Darren, what do you think about the prison sentences in general that these people have been getting?
I think they're completely overblown, and
yeah. So I mean, on the plus side, we did get past Ray Epps.
Yes. On the plus side, we did get past Ray Epps. It's funny, just a quick point on like the very end there. It's funny that like I feel like it, you know, to what you said last time or maybe 2 times ago, Ben, you know, it does feel like Alex Jones is like really anxious to take these constant breaks. He's just like, I'm going to take a break in a little bit. And then like somehow the host was like, I guess we're taking a break. And then it's like, no, we're not. Like, that was just a weird, confusing interaction where they're like,
yeah, I don't
and it
know
was all because Alex Jones was like, I want to go for a break. And it's like, why?
Yeah, maybe.
But it's kind of good because when he leaves, you notice how much more like calm the discussion is.
Oh my God. Yeah. There's so much more actual discussion when he leaves because like people can actually get through points.
Yeah. That was a pretty funny interaction between like him and Destiny. It was just like trying to get a point across. And like, that was pretty fun. I mean, I don't know where we want to start on this. Cause like there's quite a lot, but also like, I don't know, maybe similarly uninteresting to the Ray Epps stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some of this at least gets a little bit more interested. You know, I mean, the whole discussion suffers from the parameters being really unclear. right? What they're like. It kind of seems like the subject is anything anybody has to say that in some way or another is related to January 6th or stuff, related to January 6th. But I guess on the substance of this, all of like everything about overcharging of January 6th defendants and the comparison to the post George Floyd riots, like that actually at least seems a lot more interested to me than like
True.
whether one guy is a Fed or not, right? And yeah, I will say I was just looking at there's a article from the Associated Press. Anybody's free to sort of do their own Alex Jones impression in their head of like he'd be like, oh, the Associated Press. But there's this AP article that I was looking at called Record Rebut Claims of Unequal Treatment of January 6 rioters, where they go into hundreds of cases of people who were charged, coming out of the protests and riots after the murder of George Floyd, at least 120 of them pled guilty or were convicted at trial of federal crimes, including rioting, arson, and conspiracy. More than 70 got an average of 27 months behind bars. At least 10 received prison terms of 5 years or more. So I don't know if this is decisive on that point, but like I think at least some of that talking point about the Jan 6 rioters versus the BLM rioters is overstated, right? Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I think that sounds right to me. I was just going to say also about that interaction that I kind of mentioned before between Destiny and Alex Jones. I actually think it's like a really good question that Destiny was trying to pose to sort of Alex and, to some extent also Glenn, which is just like, if you're not going to trust any of these things, right? Obviously, Alex is a much more extreme case, but it seems like, Glenn is kind of on that path of just like mistrusting all institutions. Although obviously in Glenn's case, there's some actual real points that he makes about the institutions. But it's still a good question of like, how far does that line of reasoning take you, right? Like, if you're just not going to trust any of these things, right? If every time we bring up some point about like this institution found this, right? The court's under oath, right? This person said this under oath, these judges thought, decided the case in a way that was not the way that you're arguing, right? It's like, if you're just not going to trust any of those things, like where does that leave you, right? And I think he was kind of trying to get to this point to get Alex Jones to admit, well, the next step is, I guess, insurrection and rebellion, right? If you don't trust anything, well, then that kind of morally leads you to insurrection and rebellion.
Yeah. I guess maybe I do disagree a little bit about that one because I think that there are, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot, like in terms of the use of political violence, it seems like there are more factors at play than just like whether the institutions you're violently rebelling against are legitimate or not, right? Like you could think that they're pretty illegitimate, but still for a variety of reasons, not support, not think it's a good idea to do political violence, maybe even think that like, certainly at least prudentially think that it's about, that it would be bad, and maybe even think that like morally it's just wrong to do, to like use violence when you have like a really low chance of like anything good happening as a result of it. So I think that like probably like presumably like a lot of like, I don't know, like 1970s Soviet dissidents, right, thought that the Soviet government was like really radically illegitimate in various ways, but they didn't support, for like all of those kinds of reasons, they probably didn't support, violence against it. I mean, look, in a lot of ways, I think that a lot of these institutions are really illegitimate, right? You know, I don't think that I don't think political violence, you know, is a good idea outside of like some really specific circumstances that don't resemble, you know, what we've got right now. I mean, I guess where I thought you were going with that was like a little bit different, which is like which is like more of an epistemic point, right? Like about like just sort of throwing out everything that like, because like the source of the information in some way or another is like institutional and suspect. And then it's like, okay, well, you know, what are you basing your stuff on then, right? Is it like little bits of videos that were like circulating around Twitter or stuff Chuck or Carlson said, you know, like, and you know, it always seems like the question should be comparative, right? Like it's not like, yes, big media institutions are sometimes dishonest, but like, is the track record of reliability better or worse than whatever you're using?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely that. And I was thinking about that as well. But, you know, I do think that that's a good point about like violence. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of pragmatic and maybe even moral reasons why, even if you think an institution is not legitimate, that you wouldn't want to engage in political violence. Although when posed directly to Alex Jones, I guess because his rhetoric is so inflammatory and so like the way that he frames how corrupt the institutions are, I guess if you do take the Alex Jones route with how, then I think it's at least a reasonable question to not say, well, yeah, is it a strategically good idea to rebel against the government? But certainly you could ask the question, well, if they're as bad as you think they are, well, then wouldn't it be morally justifiable to commit political violence? And kind of, I think maybe he was trying to catch him to say, well, that's secretly why you think the Jan 6 was like the right thing, because you don't think that any of the institutions.
Yeah. And to be fair to your point, I mean, I think that Alex Jones's belief system is like, you know, he probably thinks that like the sort of badness of the US government is like quite a bit worse than like authors of like Dissident Samizdat thought that Brezhnev was, right? Like, you know, that those guys didn't think that Brezhnev was like, I don't know, conspiring to like eat babies so that the lizard people could wipe out most of the human race. So, you know, like, etc. Right. I mean, this is always the, you know, I think last time I might have mentioned, you know, that I've got a soft spot for this podcast, Knowledge Fight, where they just, they basically just listen to Alex Jones episodes and talk through all the crazy shit he says. And, you know, even though on a certain level, I think that it's like a mistake to sort of put too much importance, right, to the Alex Jones of the world, right? You know, that like they're probably actually less dangerous than a lot of, you know, much more boring kind of like, you know, I don't know, like Republican donors who own car dealerships and Federalist Society, you know, climbers and all that, those kinds of people. But it is really entertaining. And sometimes if I'm a long car trip, so I'll like pop on a couple of episodes of Knowledge Fight. They also have very long episodes. And like one of the things that comes out in a really funny way in those episodes is just the whiplash in like even within the same episode of InfoWars, where Alex will like be talking about how there's like literally going to be a war between angels and demons like really soon. It's going to like wipe out most of the human race. And then like 20 minutes later, Roger Stone is on to like talk about the midterms, and then to have like a semi-normal conversation about it. It's like, wait a second, why do I even care about that? The war between the angels and the demons is about to happen. And like, I think you got a little bit of that whiplash even in this conversation between times when like Alex is like really revved up that it's like, it was a real insurrection, but we're going to show you, right? You're just going to keep pushing it and we're going to kill all you. I mean, he doesn't say that last part, but that's definitely the implication, right? Like, and he was like, oh yeah, no, I don't believe the Dominion thing. That's, you know, like that's extreme. I'm honest.
Yeah. See, I'm intellectually honest. See.
Oh,
Ethan, got anything to add or no?
No, I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I agree that like, I do think that like, you know, if one of the points, I didn't actually catch anyone making this point, but if the point that someone was making is to kind of say, well, you know, if you really think all of these, institutions are illegitimate. Why don't, do you support political violence? It's like,
Yeah,
maybe an interesting point, but
hinted at that.
yeah, I think, it's maybe like a kind of interesting point in some contexts, but it also in this context just feels like kind of a non sequitur. It's like, okay, we're talking about this epistemic point, and all of a sudden you're trying to give a reductio to like my, some moral reductio where it's like, oh, how could you support something so heinous? It's like, what moral position Alex Jones takes on violence towards these institutions doesn't really bear on this epistemic point of how much should how much should the degeneracy of these institutions lead us to doubt what they have to say in terms of evidence, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wonder, Victor, how you were reading that argument from Destiny, because like, I think, it seems like part of the context is,
well, it's difficult too because he kept getting interrupted too by Alex.
Yeah, no, you did. That's also very true. By the way, just as a footnote on that, it is really funny how much Alex has like tried to take over moderation.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna hear from Glenn, and then you go.
It's like, we're gonna hear from Glenn, then we're going for a break.
Yeah.
It's like, and the guy, yeah, it's true.
It's like, man, Moonlord is right there. I mean, I know he doesn't talk for like 45 minutes to stretch, but he is right there.
He's also, it's also funny how the way he throws questions out too. It's kind of like, it's like, so guys, like, what do you think? Do you think that like people were planted by the FBI? What do you think? Let's talk about it. It's just like, all right.
Yeah.
Like a bit too
also
informal.
maybe a kind of strained analogy, but like the Moonlord guy as a moderator just kind of like, it just seems like that like dad who like doesn't discipline his children, and then like once a day he'll like walk downstairs and like throw something at him like, shut up, It's like...
He does give off that vibe. I agree. I think that's apt.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Like how irritated he is when he does talk compared to like literally, I mean, okay, 45 minutes is an exaggeration, but it's like, I'm pretty sure there were 20-minute stretches of people interrupting each other where Moonlord literally didn't speak once.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess like going back just briefly, since we are, we are probably getting into the last few minutes of the main show here, to this substance of what they're talking about. Like, I guess I'd want to like, on this last part, right, differentiate a couple of questions. One of them is basically whether overcharging was going on, right, of Jan 6 defendants, and then another one is like, what does this show? Like, is it really the case that like, BLM rioters got off easy because because like the lib controlled state, liked what they stood for or whatever. Because I think plausibly the answer is yes in some cases to the first question, right? But that there are people who were sort of had the book thrown at them based on kind of maximal interpretations of like, like what laws their actions could fit into, and maybe that there is something authoritarian and worried about some of this, but also like, I mean, there are a bunch of people from the summer of 2020 the post George Floyd protests and riots who were charged pretty aggressively. There are people. There certainly was tons of police violence that was not just directed at rioters, but at protesters and even journalists, right? During those riots that summer, I saw plenty of videos of that. And even like more recently, you could look to like the Stop Cop City protests in Atlanta. I mean, whatever you think of the issue, right? That's as like a clearly left-coded protest, where like the state came down crazily hard on people, right? For I mean, like to the point of like invoking like terrorism laws and things like that. And like it sort of seems like the germ of like what's maybe right in Glenn's comment there is it's like, yeah, there are people who might get charged more or less harshly, basically based on whether their protest, riot, whatever they're involved in, essentially like pissed off sub-branch the state enough for like it to like really come down on you. And like, I don't think he's wrong that like Jan 6 is one of the things that did that, right? But it's like, I think, but yes, so was Stop Cop City, right? You know, even like the maybe closest analogy for Trump, right? The J20 protesters, you know, that there was some of that, you know, there too, right? So it's like just the sort of general narrative, I don't think really works, right? That I think there actually, you know, there actually has been whatever kind of complaint you might legitimately be able to make about overcharging or, you know, being too harsh. You know, I think that there are plenty of progressive coded things that you could say the same thing about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to watch, they did say that at the end, the last part was like audience questions. I was kind of relieved to hear that because we do, you know, I think we have often considered that to be like, you know, kind of optional for the breakdowns. So,
I was thinking about that too. Yeah.
That might give us like a legitimate cutoff point and still feel like we've done the whole thing. But we are going to at least try to watch a bunch of the rest of the video in the post game. We'll probably I'm probably going to need like 5-10 minutes before we go to the post game, if that's okay. But then we will watch. I mean, unless they go to like audience questions like 5 minutes after we start again, in which case we'll watch a little bit of it, right? You know, but otherwise we'll watch until the audience questions in the post game for patrons. If you're already a patron, you should have an email already with the link for the post game. If you are not, there's really no time like the present. Patreon.com/Ben Burgis. You get the patron-exclusive post games after every regular Monday and Thursday night show, access to the Discord server, early access to some stuff. Most importantly, our undying love and appreciation for helping us to keep this thing going. So if you like what we do here, do consider doing that. Monthly cost of a milkshake at a 50s nostalgia diner in 1994. So on that note, we are going to end it for the main show, and in the post game, we'll at least watch the rest of this up until the audience questions, maybe a little bit more, and you know, kind of do some wrap up thoughts about the 20 issues that we're arguing about in this debate. So I'll see people then. Yeah, 10 minutes or so. Left is best.